I'm George Curtis. Welcome to It's Your Environment. Each week it's my privilege to bring you guests that teach all of us about our environment, what we have done with it, what we should have done with it, what we can still do about it, and what part you can play in it. I think what makes this particular area of the universe very unique is water. Most of the world has a real shortage of quality water. We really have more than our share, and perhaps we've treated it with less respect than we should have. I have some experts for you today that are going to discuss our water, and they're professionals. They are responsible to make our watershed better and responsible to teach you to do your part. My first guest is Jessica Schultz. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, tell us a little bit about your job and why we should care.
Great. Well, first I appreciate the introduction that you gave, because water is what makes Northeast Wisconsin so special. And for so long, I think we turned our backs to the water and just accepted it for the industrial use that it had for us and the reason why we all came here to begin with. And now Fox-Wolf Watershed Alliance is working to restore our waters and really make them something that we can be proud of as a community, that we can recreate in, that we can pass down to our children. So I'm the executive director at the Fox-Wolf Watershed Alliance. Our organization's been around for over 3 decades, but we are growing really fast right now because there's a momentum that's happening out in the watershed to restore the waters and make them something great. And so the Fox-Wolf Watershed Alliance is excited to be part of that. We're building partnerships out in the watershed and working, like you said, to protect and restore the resources.
Well, tell our audience a little bit. Is this a government organization? Is it subsidized by private money? Who makes the decisions and who gets paid?
That's great. Fox-Wolf Watershed Alliance is an independent nonprofit. We work through a variety of resources. We have been very fortunate to receive funding from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, so federal funds, to help do some on-the-ground work to restore our watershed. We also receive grant funding from the state, as well as private foundations. But we're really working to build our funding from local stakeholders, so people like you and others that are watching the program pay membership fees that help us do what we do.
And what particular waterways are we trying to protect and improve?
The Fox-Wolf Basin covers 17% of, I think over 17% of Wisconsin's land. Covers over 6,000 square miles of the landscape, starts north of Crandon, and north of Crandon drains the Wolf River down into the Winnebago system, and then starting in Portage County, the upper Fox River drains north into the Winnebago system. All that water from the Winnebago system drains northeast up the lower Fox River into the Bay of Green Bay. The landscape that drains into those lakes is called the Fox-Wolf Basin or the Fox-Wolf Watershed, and that's what we're working to protect.
And of course it goes through different kinds of terrain and industries and things like that, so I suppose different threats, different solutions.
That's true. Different threats and different solutions. Right now, though, throughout the basin, we are working on non-point runoff. And so that is the threats of the urban landscape, the runoff that comes from our streets, parking lots, and goes into our rivers, as well as agricultural landscape, the runoff that comes from the farms. It all picks up the same types of pollution. So we have the nutrients and sediments, or total suspended solids, that come off all parts of our landscape. And that's really what our waters are struggling with right now, while we're seeing the dead zones in the Bay of Green Bay and the blue-green algae blooms in Lake Winnebago. It's all due to the runoff from the landscape.
Civilization hasn't done us much favor when it comes to our waterways. I suppose in the 1700s, our missionaries and our trappers and our explorers were going down areas that had buffers that didn't have hard surfaces draining, people changing their oil that didn't have farmers with pesticides and herbicides, and didn't have industry with their pipes coming out of the back of factories,
Yep.
and all of that sort of thing. In the interest of profit, expediency, I'm sure it appeared to them like there was no limit to the water, no problem. There was always more just coming from upstream. But that hasn't proved to be the case, has it?
Yeah, I think that we have. We've used and abused our water resources, and now we need to figure out how we can still live as a civilization, still get done what we need to get done, but do it in a way that works better for our environment. And we've seen so many changes over the last few decades, and we continue to see that now. We just need to speed up our thinking a little bit and speed up those changes.
We still drink the water, the same water that we put out of our sewage system and recreate it, put it out in the lake, we bring it back and we drink it again, don't we?
We don't get new water, so it
That's right.
just continues to be recycled, and we're very blessed that we have an earth that helps clean our water, but it's not infinite, right? We need to clean up what we're doing in order to
Well, I'm
make
much,
sure it's good
much
for future
older than I look,
generations.
Jessica, but something I learned a long time ago is the people who believe everything will iron out aren't doing much ironing, and somebody's got to take care of it. And it sounds like your group is the point group for this area.
You know, there are a lot of people working to protect our waters, and I think the role that the Fox-Wolf Watershed Alliance is playing is bringing stakeholder groups together to learn what's working in different parts of the watershed and transfer successes from one area to another, because we are talking about a really large landscape. We are highlighting let's talk about agriculture for a minute. We're highlighting the farmers that are doing really good work in hopes that that expands. We're helping municipalities connect with each other to learn lessons learned, so we're not reinventing the wheel every time we need a new solution. So I think that's what the Fox-Wolf Watershed Alliance is doing best, is connecting people with other people. But there's a lot of great partners doing good work. And so we found our niche, and we are bringing as many people to the table, because we all need to be in this if we want to see the changes.
Well, that sounds very, very worthwhile, and you did an excellent job, Jessica, of giving us an overview. And I hate to tell you this because I'm enjoying it, but your 8 minutes are up. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Environment. I'm George Curtis, and we have a new guest who is going to tell us about runoff. His name is Chad Van Landenberg.
Vanden Langenberg, very well done.
Okay. Do I get another try at that, Chad?
It's your show.
All right. You tell us what you do, who you do it for, and why do we care about runoff?
So I'm a project coordinator for the Fox-Wolf Watershed Alliance. I work with two of their programs. The first program is our GLRI-funded projects, working with county land conservation departments and other folks working for better environmental solutions to agricultural practices, so agricultural conservation practices. The other portion of my job is I manage the Northeast Wisconsin Stormwater Consortium, dealing with urban stormwater runoff.
Well, agriculture has certainly changed an awful lot since my days on the farm with horses and a lot of tree lines and swales and marshes and things that hadn't been cleared, and people weren't farming out in the middle of the road because of the need to produce a lot more crops. It's become chemical. It's become leveling big fields and not having buffers and things like that. And what effect has that had on water?
It has a pretty damaging effect. Obviously, I agree with you. We are seeing the death of the small farms and the growth of big, larger farms, more animal units on the land, more manure spreading, and that affects our water quality. So our GLRI projects, working with county land conservation departments, we're promoting buffer strips along stream corridors. We're promoting grassed waterways in your fields for filtering off that runoff as it comes off the land. One of our big projects is we're working with farmers to plant cover crops. in their fields to try to keep a living cover crop or living plants 365 days a year. Even over the winter months, we want plants on the ground so that when that snow melt comes, like it is right now, that runoff is getting filtered before it hits our streams.
So it sounds to me like you're in part fighting runoff. You want to keep that water on the farm as long as you can.
We do. We want to keep it on the land as long as we can, let it filter out those pollutants, let the plants uptake those nutrients and the chemicals that we're putting on the farm fields so that they're not ending up in our waterways.
And I suppose you have to be very aware of the kind of herbicides, pesticides, and weed killers of various kinds and poisons that can cause problems if they do get into our waterways, because eventually we drink that water, don't we?
Exactly. Even if we don't drink it, we're pulling it into our water treatment plants, and they have to filter it and clean it before we can drink it. So,
what do you
yes.
do to monitor the kinds of chemicals that are put on these farms?
We do have monitoring stations set up throughout the watershed, mainly on a lot of our projects. What we're trying to do is figure out if our GLRI projects are actually working to make sure that we're filtering out those pollutants and removing those sediments from the runoff coming off those farm fields.
Now, it costs money to modify a farm. Do you deal directly with the farmers, and are there any kind of programs that help defray the cost for the farmer to do it right?
Yes, we are funding some of these practices in the farms through our GLRI funded Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funded projects. The farmers do get some payments from us and our partners for doing these conservation practices.
Now, a farmer who farms some of our land, and he's a great guy and a great neighbor, but he keeps adding another 50 cows every time the price of milk goes down, and so he's farming more of the land all the time, and there's less wasteland, fewer buffers, and he puts chemicals on the land so there aren't any weeds growing, those chemicals, if we can't keep them on the farm, they go running into the streams and Rush Lake, Fox River, eventually down through Butamore and Lake Winnebago, and we get to drink it. In fact, we'll give you some before you leave.
Awesome.
And what does your group do, or is it pretty much just education to make sure we're not drinking his Roundup?
A lot of it's education. I think the cover crops that we're planting are doing a very good job of removing a lot of those chemicals, allowing the plants to uptake those chemicals, and it's really helping out with the manure issues as well. We can spread manure onto living fields or green fields and allow those plants to uptake the phosphorus and the nitrogen out of the manure instead of it ending up in our waterways.
Now, part of your job is education, and that's one reason we have you here today. What can you tell the public that they should be aware of, and what they can do about the problem to improve things?
So there's lots of things that residential and urban folks can do. I want to talk a little bit about our Stormwater Consortium. It's the Northeast Wisconsin Stormwater Consortium. 61 members pay in membership dues to this organization, mainly municipal members, but we also have corporate members and university members. That group is working to meet the minimum control measures that are set into their municipal separate storm sewer system permits, which is a WDNR permit, and they're trying to educate homeowners and urban residents on how or what they can do at home to help improve water quality.
We're almost out of this segment. Time goes in a hurry, but I want you to tell people some good news. Things are getting better.
Things are definitely getting better. We're planting cover crops. Our municipalities are doing good work in trying to reduce their load allocations and their pollution to the rivers under their MS4 permitting. And Kelly can tell you a little bit more about that in her outreach and education segment coming up.
But there's a lot more to be done.
There is a lot more to be done. We're going to continue to work on it, and we'll continue to do better.
And if people want to get involved, how do they do that?
I would say contact your municipality, contact your public works departments, talk to them about what they can do and what they can do at home. They can put in rain gardens, they can put in rain barrels. There's lots of stuff you can do at home to improve water quality coming off of your property.
Well, thanks for the great job that you're doing. Thanks for being on the show, and thanking you for what you've done to make our water drinkable. Many of us drink other things besides water, but we have to drink a little water too. Thanks,
We didn't
Kat.
get to talk about clean water makes better beer, right? Is that Austin's segment?
We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Environment. I'm George Curtis. We have a group of people here today that are helping us put on a program explaining to you what's happening to your water. They're responsible for making your water better, the water you use to drink, cook, bathe your children, recycle, wash things, do your laundry. It gets out to the lake, we hope in good shape, and then we start over again. This young lady is a hands-on person when it comes to our water, and her name is Kelly Ryer. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I think that I knew you when you were running the Butamore Conservation Club, and you did a fine job with that. So this kind of in your blood, isn't it, Kelly?
Definitely.
Tell us a little bit about what your job is with respect to protecting our water.
All right, so I am the outreach coordinator, so a lot of my job focuses on outreach. I provide outreach on what our watershed is, how it functions, and the impacts to our lakes and our rivers. Some of the ways that I do this outreach is through social media, through printed materials, but then also going into the different school systems, community presentations, exhibiting, any way that I can find, sometimes going on shows or on the news. If I can find a way to reach a lot of people and talk to them about our waterways and our storm drains and how the water that goes into our storm drains directly to our lakes and our rivers, that's what I'm doing. That's what I spend most of my time doing.
Sounds like you're into education, and that's what everybody needs, is a awareness of when they change their oil out in the curb and gutter and in front of their home and they let some of it slip away. That's not the end of it. It comes back to haunt all of us, doesn't it?
Definitely, and I like to hope things like that aren't happening, but I'm sure they are. So part of my education is, letting, like I said before, the first thing is if they know that the water that goes into our storm drains goes directly to our lakes and rivers untreated, I can start talking about more things that they can do on their properties to help protect that water. So rainwater and snowmelt is going to run off your property, and there's things that can get picked up by that rainwater. Things like grass clippings, they can easily wash down our storm drains and provides phosphorus out to our lakes that really don't need any more phosphorus in them. People can oftentimes wash their vehicles in their driveways, and then all that soap and dirty stuff from their car is going to go into the storm drains. So again, a lot of my education focuses on different changes that people can make at home to protect our waters.
And of course, a lot of us pour fertilizers and chemicals on our grass so that we can mow it more often. Maybe you could cut that off at the head by going to the schools and starting educating people when they're little kids. Do you do that?
Yeah, so I know in 2018 I reached 1,811 students. I just know that number, but that is students. Those are students from Fond du Lac up to Green Bay, all different schools, all different grades. And what's surprising is that I've noticed a lot of students know more about this stuff than some adults do. So that's really encouraging. But yes, I reach a lot of students, and it's a great place to start.
And you take people out in the field, don't you, to show them how to do the actual cleanup? Not only accomplishing a cleanup, but also an awareness of when we toss something out of our car, out of our boat, it isn't gone just because we can't see it anymore.
Exactly. So another big part of my position is coordinating the annual Fox-Wolf Watershed Cleanup. It's a cleanup event that takes place in April near Earth Day every year, and it is an event that has really grown over the years. So this year we have 62 sites throughout our basin along our lakes and our rivers, and we're expecting over 1,000 volunteers. And what's great is that not only does this help educate our residents and our community volunteers about what the impacts are to our waterways, but it really gives them a hands-on way to do something about it, and I think people really appreciate that.
Are your presentations available to service clubs or other groups that are always looking for somebody to speak during their meal, and they want to come away with some knowledge? Do you do that?
Definitely, all the time. So examples would be like some bigger companies will have lunch and learn events. So you can come in during the lunchtime and reach their employees. I have done that at Mercury Marine, at Silver Star Brands in 2018. But recently I did the Learning in Retirement program through UW Oshkosh. So yeah, lots of different community presentations. Again, reaching as many people as possible with this information we feel like will have a really great impact on seeing change to our waterways.
What kind of questions do the school children ask you?
A lot of questions. I get a lot of questions from the kids. But they usually, here's one that I usually get is, why don't they just cover our storm drains with nets so that that water can't go in there? And then I explain, I just follow that up with a question, well, what do you think would happen if we didn't have storm drains? And then they realize that everything would flood every single time it rains. So I like that they're thinking about that, though. But that's a pretty common question that I get.
Well, I like what you're doing. That's an understatement. I like what your group is doing. Are things getting better? Are our waters getting better, cleaner, safer?
Our waters definitely have improved over time since, back in the day when different rivers were on fire throughout the country. We've moved on since then, but now our biggest issue is not what companies are polluting into our waterways, but what's running off our landscape, like Chad and Jessica have talked about. So what's running off our farm fields and what's running off in our cities, off of our own lawns. So I think one of the biggest messages we have is that if we all, as a community, want to see cleaner waters, we all have a part to play in it.
And of course, you have touched on a very important subject, and that is for a couple hundred years, our industries, not just in this state, have used our waterways as their own private sewer. If you take a canoe ride from Berlin through Omro or anywhere on the Fox, which I do frequently, you see all of these pipes coming out of the backs of old factories, and you know what they were doing. They were using the public water and putting it back in the public water, and there's a cost factor in doing it right, isn't there?
Yeah, so we still have drains draining water into our lakes and our rivers, but now they're coming from our streets and they're coming from us. So just a different shift of where that pollution is coming from, and hopefully we see a shift in what people can do to make a difference.
Well, it's primarily about education, and that's what you're doing. And I congratulate you for that, and I hope that you continue to do it. Your organization seems to be a real leader in doing it, and I look forward to the time when we can dip our hands in the water and take a drink, like probably people could do 200 years ago coming down the Fox or the Wolf. Keep it up.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. You might recall one of the greatest speeches in the history of our country, Martin Luther King Jr., saying, "I had a dream." And that was a great dream and a great speech, and I hope our country lives up to Martin's dream. I have a dream too. I dream sometimes of what it must have been like putting myself in the place of an explorer or a missionary or a trapper in the 1700s coming to this beautiful part of our country with marshes, clean water, wildlife, waterfowl, and being able to paddle my canoe, and when I have a thirst, reach down with my hand and pick up a handful of water and drink it with the comfort of knowing it's the safest water in the world. That should be a dream for all of us. That should be a goal. That should be a promise to our children and our grandchildren. I'm George Curtis, and that's my opinion.